Need a blueprint to start your mobile notary business? Don't stumble through the process. You need an outline for success. Introducing the Mobile Notary Blueprint by Derrick Spruill. Build your thriving mobile business and protect yourself from costly mistakes with expert advice. Buy your copy of the Mobile Notary Blueprint by Derrick Spruill from any online bookstore, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble Bookstore, booksofmillion.com, bookshop.org, Mobile Notary by DerrickSpruill.com, or download from Kindle and build your successful notary business today.
Imagine sitting at your desk, just looking at a live video call.
Right, just a standard Tuesday afternoon.
Exactly. You see the face of your chief financial officer. You hear his familiar voice. He instructs you to authorize a $25 million wire transfer.
$25 million.
$25 million. And he even banters with other colleagues on the screen, so you execute the transfer.
Because why wouldn't you? Everything looks completely normal.
Right. And then an hour later, you realize a terrifying truth. You were the only living, breathing human being on that call. Welcome to Notary Knowledge. I'm Marylyn.
And I'm Eddie. And, that scenario isn't from some sci-fi movie. That is exactly what happened to a finance worker at a multinational corporation in Hong Kong in early 2025.
It's wild. And as we've discussed in prior episodes about scaling your notary operations, the landscape out there is just constantly shifting. But today we are zeroing in on a highly specific mission for those of you on the front lines.
Yeah, we're talking about mitigating the remote risk, specifically remote online notarization, or RN fraud.
Yes. We're pulling from real-world errors and omissions case studies, some really intense 2025 and 2026 legislative bills, like Texas Senate Bill 693 and National Notary Association white papers. We're getting into the massive explosion of synthetic identity fraud.
It is a critical time for you, as professional notaries and legal professionals, to understand exactly what is happening here, because the tools of deception, they've completely leaped forward.
They really have. Think of the modern notary public seal as a fortress, right? And it's built on physical friction.
Mm-hmm.
For centuries, you defended that fortress by relying on physical resistance, examining a driver's license under a magnifying glass, watching someone's hand as they sign a piece of paper, making direct eye contact across a mahogany desk.
Yeah, the analog world.
Exactly. But today, AI has entirely removed that physical friction. That fortress is now under siege by invisible, highly coordinated AI-powered armies. And if you don't understand the mechanics of these new weapons, well, the walls will be breached before you even realize an attack has begun.
Absolutely. To understand how to protect your operation, we really have to examine those sophisticated new weapons. So let's go back to that $25 million Hong Kong case for a second.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
The victim didn't just get a spoofed email or like a fake text message. They were interacting with real-time, highly convincing deepfakes of multiple corporate officers simultaneously.
Which is just mind-blowing.
It is, and it proved to the risk management world that real-time, interactive synthetic media is fully operational right now.
But how does that actually translate to our world? A corporate Zoom call is one thing, but a secure RN platform is built specifically to prevent that kind of thing.
Right, they have firewalls and protocols.
Exactly. The software controls the webcam environment, right? So how are these criminals faking a live video feed during an actual notarization?
Well, that is where criminals use what is known as a video injection attack.
An injection attack?
Yeah. So they aren't just, holding a tablet up to a webcam. That would look glitchy.
Right, you'd see the glare or whatever.
Exactly. Instead, the fraudster uses specialized software to create a virtual camera environment.
Wow.
They bypass the physical hardware of the computer entirely.
Wow.
So when the ARN platform asks for camera access, the system doesn't pull from the physical lens on the laptop. It pulls the feed from the fraudster's software, injecting a hyper-realistic AI-generated avatar directly into your secure session.
Okay, so they have a fake face on the screen. But to get to you, the notary, they still have to pass the platform's credential analysis and the knowledge-based authentication, right? The KBA.
They do.
How does a fake video feed answer deeply personal questions about, past addresses or old vehicle loans?
This is where massive corporate data breaches come into play.
Yeah.
Take the 2024 AT&T breach, for example.
Well, right. That was huge.
Massive. It exposed the raw data of 73 million users. Names, dates of birth, social security numbers, past addresses, all of it.
So they just used that stolen data to breeze through the KBA questions.
Exactly. They had the cheat sheet. But the credential analysis, scanning the physical ID, that requires a completely different tool.
Right.
Criminals take that stolen data and plug it into generative AI services on the dark web, like OnlyFake. And these platforms can instantly synthesize high-fidelity government IDs.
Wait, I need to stop you there. Credential analysis software doesn't just look at a basic picture.
No, it doesn't.
It analyzes microprinting, it reads the PDF 417 barcode on the back of the license, it checks the font spacing. How on earth does an AI-generated image trick an enterprise-grade security scanner?
Because the AI isn't just drawing a picture of an ID, it's actually engineering a digital forgery from the metadata up.
Metadata?
Yeah, so tools like OnlyFake generate the exact matching barcode data required.
Oh.
They manipulate the EXIF metadata of the image file.
Okay, EXIF data, that's the stuff that says what kind of camera took the photo, right?
Exactly. So they manipulate it to make it look like the photo was taken by a standard smartphone camera just moments ago. They even synthesize the lighting in the background.
You mean like shadows and stuff?
Yeah, like placing the fake ID on a digital image of a wooden table or a fluffy carpet. So the software interprets it as a genuine physical object in a real-world environment.
That is terrifying.
It is. They feed that synthetic identity package into the funnel, and the system just greenlights it.
But if an AI can generate a face that talks and blinks in real time, doesn't that make the standard liveness detection we rely on completely obsolete?
You mean the prompts?
Yeah, like a lot of these platforms ask the signer to follow a prompt, turn your head to the left, smile, blink twice. Does that even work anymore?
Well, the platform algorithms are constantly updating their pixel analysis to catch synthetic artifacts, weird blending around the edges of the face.
Yeah.
So they aren't totally defenseless.
Sure, but you are still telegraphing the test to the criminal. I mean, the moment the screen prompts the user to smile, the fraudster just clicks a button and the software generates a smile.
Yeah.
It's essentially an open book test for an AI.
And that is the critical vulnerability right there. You are describing active liveness detection, asking the subject to perform a specific action. And you are spot on. It warns the imposter.
It literally tells them what to do.
Right. It gives the software the split second it needs to render the requested movement. And because the platforms can no longer guarantee the person on the screen is real, the legal system is basically looking for a scapegoat when the money disappears.
And unfortunately for you, the professional out there, the scapegoat is the notary.
Exactly.
We're going to take a quick commercial break right here, but stick around because we need to talk about the real-world financial fallout of these attacks.
Don't go anywhere.
And we're back. So before the break, we were getting into the real-world consequences here. Because the technology has reached this level of sophistication, the financial liability for a notary making a mistake during a remote signing has absolutely skyrocketed.
Oh, without a doubt.
We are no longer talking about eating a $50 refiling fee. We are looking at tens of thousands of dollars in catastrophic damages.
The recent errors and omissions cases from the National Notary Association are sobering, to say the least. Let's examine a specific Aran case that recently went through the courts.
Okay, let's hear it.
A notary who was authorized for remote online notarization completed a signing that turned out to be entirely fraudulent. And the critical piece of evidence used against her in court was the mandatory audio-visual recording of the transaction itself.
Which is such a double-edged sword. I mean, if you do everything by the book, that video is your impenetrable shield.
Exactly.
But if you deviate from the standard, it is an undeniable forensic audit trail of your own negligence.
Precisely. And in this specific case, the video proved two fatal errors. First, she failed to properly examine the ID documents on camera.
Big mistake.
Huge. But second, and honestly more legally damning, she permitted a second person to remain in the room and assist the signer with the knowledge-based authentication questions.
Wait, really? But why does that specific action shift the liability? I mean, if a person is just helping their spouse remember an old zip code, why is that the notary's fault?
Because KBA relies entirely on the premise of isolated individual knowledge.
Oh, I see.
The legal attribution of identity is broken the moment a third party interferes. The plaintiff's lawyer successfully argued that by allowing that coaching, the notary actively facilitated the breach of security protocol.
Wow. So what was the damage?
She incurred $75,000 in settlement and legal fees.
Oh my gosh, $75,000.
Yeah, that practically wiped out her entire $100,000 E&O policy.
That is brutal. And, it isn't just high-tech scenarios where we see these massive losses. Often the underlying human error is the exact same as it was 50 years ago.
Rushing.
Exactly. Rushing and bypassing friction. Look at the car window settlement from the sources. A traditional notary was pressured by a scheming signer who was supposedly in a massive hurry.
Right, they always are.
Always. And she conducted the notarization through the window of a running car.
A running car, you can't make this up.
You really can't. And because she allowed the signer to dictate the pace of the transaction, she bypassed her own mental friction. She completely missed a glaring red flag. The name the signer wrote in her physical journal did not match the name of the taxpayer on the warranty deed.
That is a basic, fundamental check.
Yep. And that single moment of rushing cost her a $55,000 settlement, plus another $18,000 in attorney's fees.
Ouch.
And then there are cases where notaries intentionally bypass the rules because they think they are doing a favor. Like there is a case involving a notary who had a friend in another state who desperately needed to be appointed executor of an estate during a COVID lockdown.
I remember reading about this one. The notary was not commissioned to perform electronic notarizations, right?
Nope. Nor did she use an approved Secure On platform. She just decided to do the notarization over a standard Skype call.
Over Skype.
Over Skype. She watched her friend sign over the webcam, had the friend scan and email the document, and then affixed her physical seal to the printed scan.
And let me guess, the court threw it out.
Immediately. They rejected the document because it was a blurry copy, not an original. The estate was delayed, a massive lawsuit followed, and that notary lost her entire $25,000 E&O policy just because she acted outside the scope of her commission.
It's just a classic failure of procedure.
It really is. It reminds me of a commercial pilot ignoring their pre-flight checklists.
That's a great analogy.
Right. It does not matter if you are flying a vintage prop plane, which is your traditional paper signing, or a state-of-the-art jet, which is RON. The checklist is there to save your life.
Exactly.
If you skip the walk around because you feel rushed or because you want to help a friend get off the ground faster, you're going to crash. And the altitude is just so much higher now with RON, so the crash is infinitely more devastating.
The altitude is way higher. And the financial damages are so vast now that state legislatures are fundamentally changing the rules of engagement. They're no longer treating these notarial errors as simple administrative oversights or civil mistakes.
They are stepping it up.
Big time. States are actively criminalizing negligence to build a legislative firewall around the real estate and financial markets.
So if you are sitting in your office right now, stamping a warranty deed, you are probably wondering if a glitchy webcam or a convincing deepfake is going to land you in a state penitentiary next year.
And if you are in Texas, that is a very real conversation to be having.
Let's unpack that. Texas Senate Bill 693. This takes effect in phases between September 2025 and January 2026, right?
Yes, it does.
Texas has actually made it a criminal offense if a notary fails to verify personal appearance. And if the document involves the transfer of real estate, that offense escalates to a state jail felony.
A state jail felony. Let that sink in.
It's heavy.
The legislature is essentially deputizing the notary as the ultimate gatekeeper of the economy. Real estate isn't just property, it is the collateral that underpins the banking system. Fraudulent deeds poison that well.
And with that immense responsibility comes incredibly strict new requirements. Under SB 693, traditional notaries in Texas must now retain their records for 10 full years.
10 years is a long time to keep a journal.
It really is. And every new and renewing notary will face a mandatory education course administered by the Secretary of State.
But other states are building their own firewalls using entirely different strategies. Like, Florida passed House Bill 915, which attacks the fraud ecosystem from the advertising side.
Oh, right, the notario publico issue.
Exactly. It creates a civil cause of action against non-attorneys who exploit immigrant communities by illegally advertising as a notario publico.
We really have to look at why Florida specifically targeted that term. In many Latin American countries, a notario is not just someone who stamps documents. They are a highly educated legal professional, practically equivalent to an attorney.
Right, it carries a lot of weight.
So fraudsters weaponize that cultural trust, using the term to offer illegal, often disastrous legal advice to vulnerable populations. Florida's law empowers those victims to sue the fraudsters directly for damages.
Which is a huge step. And we are also seeing states aggressively raise the financial stakes to match the scale of modern fraud. Louisiana, for example, has drastically increased its mandatory notary bond to $50,000.
50 grand.
Yeah. And Oklahoma increased its bond to $10,000, and they now mandate background checks. The insurance math is shifting because the risk is just so much higher.
It is. But I have to bring us back to the Texas law for a second because this is where I really struggle with all of this.
Okay, what's the hang-up?
Are we criminalizing the victim here? I mean, if an incredibly diligent notary is genuinely tricked by a flawless $25 million AI deepfake, the exact kind that fools highly paid corporate executives, how can the state legally classify that notary as a felon?
That is the big question. But the legislators recognize that exact tension, which is why Texas included a specific affirmative defense provision in the law.
Okay, how does that work in practice?
Well, an affirmative defense means you can protect yourself against criminal prosecution if you can prove that an apparently valid proof of identification was knowingly presented to you.
So if it looked real?
Basically, yes. If the ID and the person on the screen looked entirely legitimate to a reasonable professional and there was no obvious way to know it was a deepfake at the time, you have a legal shield.
Okay, but how do you actually prove what you saw months or even years after the fact?
And that is the catch. The only way to successfully utilize that affirmative defense in court is to have utterly flawless records.
Flawless.
Your electronic journal, the unedited audiovisual recording, the complete system audit trail of the credential analysis, that meticulous, unbroken chain of evidence is your only get-out-of-jail-free card.
Wow.
Without the records, you simply have no defense.
We're going to take one more quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about how you can practically defend yourself against these high-tech attacks.
We'll be right back.
Welcome back. So before the break, we established that to successfully deploy that legal shield and keep yourself out of a courtroom, you really have to adopt a fundamentally different operational mindset.
You do. We have to shift from merely authenticating an ID to proving undisputed identity attribution. We have to operate with zero trust.
And the necessity of that mindset shift is perfectly illustrated by the findings of the Maine Deed Fraud Prevention Commission. They recently investigated a massive surge in what they call seller impersonation fraud.
Oh, this is a huge problem right now. Criminals are specifically targeting vacant land and properties owned by out-of-state residents.
Why vacant land, specifically?
Because there are no physical neighbors to notice a for sale sign pop up, and there are no tenants to interrupt a fraudulent appraisal. The criminals forge the listing documents, they impersonate the seller, and they specifically demand remote platforms for the closing. Because they know they can use video injection attacks to bypass the physical scrutiny of an in-person signing table.
Exactly. It's the path of least resistance.
But the industry isn't just sitting back and taking it. We are starting to fight fire with fire. The sources point out a 45% month-over-month growth in notaries adopting AI-powered forensic tools.
Yes. Platforms like Realify, for example, are specifically designed to detect deepfakes in real time.
And the mechanics of those forensic tools are just fascinating. They don't just look at the surface of the video.
No, they go way deeper. Realify runs silently in the background of the session, analyzing the raw pixel data for mathematical anomalies that the human eye cannot perceive.
Right.
It even uses remote photoplethysmography.
Say that again. Remote photo what?
Remote photoplethysmography, which is basically just a really complex way of saying it analyzes the microfluctuations in the pixel colors of a person's face to detect their actual heartbeat and blood flow.
Wait, the webcam software is checking for a pulse?
Essentially, yes, because a synthetic avatar doesn't have a pulse.
That is incredible technology. But, you can't rely entirely on a software plugin to save you. As a professional, you need human-driven, actionable defenses.
Absolutely.
Earlier, we discussed the fatal flaw of active liveness checks, how asking someone to smile gives the AI an open book test. So the countermeasure you need to practice is unannounced, passive liveness checks.
And this is where your observational skills are paramount. During the casual flow of the session, you are passively observing the signer's mechanics.
Right, like they're blinking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Are their blinking patterns natural, or are they slightly erratic? Do their facial expressions match the emotional context of the conversation? Is there a complete lack of lower body movement?
Oh, that's a great point.
Yeah, because deepfake avatars are incredibly processing heavy. So criminals often only render the head and the shoulders. If the person is unnaturally still from the chest down, that is a massive red flag.
You can also leverage behavioral biometrics. Pay close attention to latency. When you ask an unexpected question, is there a strange half-second lag before they answer?
Like the AI is rendering the audio.
Yes, exactly. Or do they sound like they're reading from a pre-written script? Another incredibly effective low-tech technique is out-of-band verification.
Which is brilliant in its simplicity.
It really is.
Before the video session even begins, you reach out to the known, verified contact information of the signer, perhaps via a secure email or a direct phone call, and you establish a secret keyword.
Right. And then when the video session goes live, your first question is asking for that keyword. If the person on screen hesitates or doesn't know it, you break the fraudster's script immediately.
It's a great strategy. And we also must acknowledge what the security white papers call the ultimate solution.
A nuclear option.
Yeah. For extremely high-value, high-risk transactions like major real estate transfers or complex estate documents, the most secure option might simply be reverting to the analog world, demanding in-person physical presence.
Right. RON is a convenience for the consumer. It is not a mandate for the notary. If your risk assessment tells you a transaction is highly vulnerable, you have the absolute authority to halt the remote process and require a physical meeting.
It is entirely about bringing back that physical friction we talked about at the beginning of the show.
I look at this entire shift like a nightclub bouncer. You know, authentication is just a bouncer scanning the barcode on the back of your driver's license to see if the machine beeps.
Just checking the plastic.
Right. But attribution. That is the bouncer handing the ID back, looking you dead in the eye and casually asking your zodiac sign or the name of your high school mascot just to see if you hesitate for a fraction of a second. It is no longer about verifying the plastic or the pixels. It is entirely about verifying the human being standing in front of you.
And that element of human verification, that finely tuned intuition, is the one thing that technology simply cannot replicate. As these digital threats continue to evolve, your role as the human verifier becomes infinitely more vital, not less.
Absolutely. Which brings us to a powerful closing thought to leave you with today. We are looking down the barrel of a future where AI will continue to advance at a staggering pace. We are talking about the eventual integration of brain-computer interfaces and holographic deepfakes that will make today's video injection attacks look like amateur hour.
It's coming.
But as that technology scales, the ultimate unbreakable firewall against billion-dollar fraud isn't a complex blockchain ledger. It isn't a smarter algorithm. It is the human intuition, the moral courage, and the discretionary judgment of the professional notary public. You are the final line of defense.
Well said. To stay ahead of these threats and continue building your expertise, we enthusiastically encourage you to pick up the Notary Knowledge Books by Derrick Spruill. They are an essential, incredibly practical resource for navigating this complex landscape.
And if you found this deep dive valuable, please take a moment to rate the show, subscribe, and share it with your colleagues and others in the industry. We really rely on you to help get this critical information to the people who need it most.
Email your questions to Derrick at derrickspruill.com. We will try to answer as soon as possible at the end of our shows.
Exec producer Derrick Spruill, lead writer Marylyn Trotter, graphics Montes Travis, music Thomas Bynum, produced by Magnificent Workz Business Solutions.
Don't just be listeners of the knowledge, be doers of the knowledge.
Wow.
This is Notary Knowledge. Until next time.
Need a blueprint to start your mobile notary business? Don't stumble through the process. You need an outline for success. Introducing the Mobile Notary Blueprint by Derrick Spruill. Build your thriving mobile business and protect yourself from costly mistakes with expert advice. Buy your copy of the Mobile Notary Blueprint by Derrick Spruill from any online bookstore, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble Bookstore, booksofmillion.com, bookshop.org, Mobile Notary by DerrickSpruill.com, or download from Kindle and build your successful notary business today.